You should be able to hear me. Let me see if anybody pops on. If you guys can hear me okay, let me know.
I'm gonna check on mine.
Let me just double check on here. Alright, can you guys hear me and see me okay? Alright. Anybody there? I see a couple people coming on. I think there might be a slight delay because the internet's probably working not as strong as it normally is.
Just a minor hurricane here.
Yeah, we're having a huge storm right now, so it was just giving me some technical difficulties. But if you guys can hear me and see me okay, let me know. I'm going to make sure on my phone. Oh, it says I have 6 comments on here, but my iPad isn't showing them. So let me see. Okay, good. It says that everybody can hear me and see me. Awesome. Let me see if I go out of this. Let's see.
Okay.
Can you see comments on yours?
Some, but
Some.
It's not moving great.
Okay. I'm going to...
I had to click off of it and click back on it.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do onto mine. Oh. Let me check on here. Alright, now I think I got everybody on here. Hi guys! Welcome, welcome. Sorry about the technical difficulties. About 20 minutes before we were supposed to start, it started storming and downpouring, so we're just having a couple technical issues here with the internet and stuff, but I think that we are on now.
You'll probably hear a lot of thunder.
Yeah, I apologize if you can hear thunder and rain. Now, if my internet or my power goes off, because sometimes our power flickers when we get storms like this pretty much every day, so if that happens, just hang on, I will come back. I'm just going to hook my phone up really quick and live stream, and hopefully that will be fine. I'll just kind of put it where my cameras are if that were to happen, because I have everything plugged in right now, but if the Wi-Fi goes out or if I have any technical power issues, I will be back. Just hang on, keep refreshing on my page, and I will come back in just a minute, but I'm just going to wait a minute for a couple more people to pop on, and then we will start with our demo for today, our Isomalt Playdate. Let's see. Just going to make sure all the comments on my phone match up with the comments on my iPad here. Okay, perfect. I got all the devices going on here. My laptop is streaming it. My iPad, I can see you guys' comments, and my phone. I'm going to put my phone off of Wi-Fi just in case we were to lose it. Alright, awesome. Let's see. Hey guys, hi, welcome, welcome. Stacy says, my daughter's joining us today for her first time, so let's get her hooked. Yes, we will definitely do that.
Yay!
Let's see, awesome, awesome. What's up?
I just shared, and instead of sharing, I clicked off of it.
Oh. Alright, let's see. Alright. If something happens and the comments don't come through for us, Mom is on her computer too on a different Wi-Fi, so we're doing everything we can to help it like update and be on time and not have a huge lag. But if something happens and your question doesn't get answered, please message me after this. I would be happy to answer any question that you have, you know, once the whole electrical storm is over. But if something happens and it doesn't show me your comment or we miss your question, please send me a message afterwards, because I will be happy to answer any questions that you guys have. Let's see. Trying to figure out if I can go back here on my iPad. Try and get the comments and everything popping up. Alright, awesome. Some of them are popping up, some of them aren't, so I'm going to keep my phone on down here too.
Yeah, mine stopped too.
Alright, let's see. Hi Kim, hi Amy, hi Anna. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so we'll get started in just a minute. Let's see. Is yours freezing or just the comments part of it?
I'm not getting any comments, so
okay.
I'm looking on my phone.
Okay. hopefully the storm will pass. They're usually pretty quick here, so hopefully they will pass by us very quickly, and we don't have too much of this rain and thunder.
I'm getting the comments on my phone, so
Okay.
I can watch that for you.
Okay, that would be awesome. Let's see, I'm going to pop my Isomalt into the microwave right before we start, just to reheat it. Alright, do you have a bag of clear? Let's grab that. Or pink. Alright, how is everybody doing today? What's the weather like where you are? Let's see. I have my comments here. I think they froze on my phone too. Thank you. Alright. Do you mind just closing that just in case the skylight gets loud again? Thank you. Okay. So we can go ahead and get started. Again, if something happens and the power goes out or my Wi-Fi goes out, just hang tight, keep refreshing on my page, and I will come back in just a minute or two on my phone. I'm just going to hook it up really quick and just do it with one camera, you know, old school style, so that I can just at least finish the demo for you guys if something does happen. So if it happens, no worries, just hang on. I will be right back. Keep refreshing the page, and I will pop back up in a couple minutes once I get all that hooked up. But welcome, guys. I am super excited about this demo. Hopefully, again, the thunder is kind of subsiding a little bit, so hopefully you guys can't hear that too much, but I'm going to try and talk loud so that you don't hear too much of the rain and thunder. But yeah, welcome. I'm so excited for you guys to be here, and I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be a really, really fun Isomalt Playdate. I love doing these live streams. They are so much fun because I get to see sort of everybody, and we get to you can ask questions, and you know, we can just interact. I know we are all kind of missing that with not being able to see each other in person right now, but luckily we have this amazing technology where we can kind of see each other, and between this and doing my Zoom workshops, it's been really, really nice. So today we are doing our Isomalt Agate Slice and Isomalt Crystal Pendant. So I'm going to show you everything that you need to do to make this. I have it here and I'll show you guys up close too. So you can see this is a transparent agate sitting with the necklace on top of it. So I'm going to show you how to get that beautiful design. Super, super easy. I'm going to show you the crystal realistic painting effect. We're going to do some pulled sugar where we do the chain on the top, and then of course, you know, just putting the whole thing together and doing the awesome texture on the outside of the agate too. So yeah, everything that I'm going to be using today, I'm going to show you as we go, but we did have the accessory kit too, so remember, you know, the Isomalt and the transfer sheets and things, it's still available on my website. But of course, if you're not familiar with Isomalt, this is the Isomalt that I'm using today, my Simi Isomalt tiles. So this is going to be pre-cooked and ready to use so that you don't have to worry about temperatures or recipes or anything. All you have to do is melt it in the microwave for 30 seconds and then 15-second intervals until it's a liquid. So again, no temperatures or recipes, you just melt these down. Remember, if you get it from a powdered form, that's raw Isomalt and it has to be tempered, so you do have to go through a very specific cooking process. My process is on my website. If anybody is interested in that, I list it for free, my recipe, but this is already pre-cooked, so you don't have to worry about any of that. We just melt it down until it's a boil in the microwave. I never stir my Isomalt so I don't get any air bubbles mixed in. I just let it come to a boil, and once it's a boil, I'll let it settle and start pouring it, which I'm about to show you.
Sydney, Stacy
Yes.
wants to know what color are you starting with?
The color that I'm starting with is going to be clear, and then we're going to closely follow that with the pink. So if you want to follow along today, we're going to be doing the clear first and then the pink afterwards. Obviously, you can customize all of these colors if you wanted to. If you want to switch it up, that's totally fine. I'm using the clear first because we're going to be pouring our agate transfer sheet, and because that already has colors, you want to use something clear on top of it so all the colors show through. But the pink, if you wanted to dilute it with a little bit of the clear Isomalt and make it a paler pink, or you can make it a really intense pink. You can color your own Isomalt with edible airbrush colors if you want to. A liquid or alcohol-based color mixed in works really good. Or you can also use a powdered color, so luster dust or petal dust. Those work great, but remember that they're not going to be see-through. Transparent colors come from airbrush colors being mixed in, liquids, but powdered colors give you more of an opaque effect or a solid effect. And then you want to make sure that you never ever mix in gel color, because remember, gel color will break down the Isomalt. So a liquid or powder is your best bet. So if you have clear already at home, you can just color it whatever color combo you would like. Yeah, and that's what we're going to be using. So Yes.
Jackie says that she's freezing there in the UK. Does that mean freezing your computer or freezing?
Freezing cold or freezing computer? Let us know.
If you're freezing your computer, just refresh it.
Yeah, refresh it. Hopefully the connection will pop back on.
Hopefully you're not freezing.
All right, I'm going to switch my camera down to my work surface. If you guys, again, have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat, and Mom is standing by. My mom, Michelle, is here, so she will be kind of looking over everything in the chat while I'm working and shouting out any questions you guys might have.
And Sharon says it's beautiful and sunny in Las Vegas.
Oh, man. I'm so jealous. All right, so yep, this is the Isomalt. You can see it a little bit closer. So it's just the pre-cooked tiles. And then we have our beautiful agate necklace here. So I'm going to put him off to the side and grab out my Isomalt, which I preheated. So again, 30 seconds and then 15-second intervals in the microwave. You see how it was boiling more so when it first ended, but it's been sitting in the microwave a little bit. But it still has some bubbles to it. And so I want to make sure that I let that settle so that it is all going to be a nice flat Isomalt. You don't want to pour this while it's boiling, bubbling hot, because it will just pour bubbles into your piece and the bubbles will get frozen in place when it cools down and hardens. So you always let your Isomalt settle. Once it comes out of the microwave and it's boiling, you just let it sit at room temperature for a couple minutes until no bubbles are moving. It's okay if you have some stuck to the bowl or just hanging out on the surface, but you don't want them rising or moving or popping at all, especially when you kind of move it around. Sometimes more bubbles will release. So I just wait until it's nice and flat, but it is still quite liquidy and pourable. Remember that I do recommend wearing gloves when working with Isomalt because it is about 300 degrees, so you don't want to touch it. That's 300 degrees Fahrenheit, 150 degrees Celsius, so very, very, very hot. Don't stick your finger in it. Wear your gloves. Usually I recommend a cotton and then a nitrile or latex glove over top of that, and that's going to just buffer the heat and protect your hands, but still be careful. I know a lot of people are intimidated by working with Isomalt, but you cook, you make cakes, you work with ovens and stovetops, which are way hotter than 300 degrees, so just be careful, wear your gloves, and you won't have any problem. All right, so while this is settling, I'm going to just set it off to the side and grab my transfer sheet. So the transfer sheet is our Simi Isomalt transfer sheets, which you guys may have seen before. I use these all the time. I love them. So basically, if you are not familiar with these, they are a type of icing paper, but they're not like regular icing sheets. They are specifically made to transfer for the heat of Isomalt. And so you can see that they're very, very thin, but they're not cocoa butter. They are a type of icing sheet. I developed these with icing images to work really well with Isomalt. So you can see that it's already kind of a transparent design, but once the Isomalt absorbs into the paper when we pour it on top, it will completely kind of just absorb in and make the piece even more transparent and translucent, which gives you this really, really pretty, unique effect. So you can see just how clear it looks. So the fun part about this is our design that is from our website. So we sell this pre-printed with all of these beautiful agate designs. It also came in the accessory kit for this project. So you have different options. I'm going to use this pretty blue agate slice because this is one of my favorites, but you could do it on any of these and I think it would be really, really pretty with that pink just popping against the purple or this bluish gray here. So you have your option, or of course, if you have an edible printer, you can get blank transfer sheets from icingimages.com and you can print anything that you want on your regular icing printer. So just with your regular edible inks, you can print out anything, and that gives you a lot of different options for different things that you can apply this to. But we're going to use it for our beautiful transparent agate slice today. So that is what I'm going to start with. Okay, again, if you guys have any questions, just send them into the chat and I'll be happy to answer them. Or if you're watching the replay of this later, you're always welcome to message me here on Facebook or Instagram or email, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Oh, by the way, Jackie in the UK says it's freezing cold.
It's freezing cold in the UK? Oh my gosh, that's so hard to imagine here because it's still in like the 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is...
No, it went back up.
Oh, it went back up? I haven't been outside.
No, it's back in the 90s.
Oh my gosh. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pour this now that my Isomalt has settled. So you see how it's still very liquidy, but it's not boiling at all. So that's how I know it's ready. Now you'll notice that as I'm about to pour this, there's no form, there's no mold or anything. You can do this the reverse way, so you could pour into a mold and then take a piece of paper that you cut out and lay it on top of the liquid Isomalt, but we're going to be doing this the opposite way. Now, of course, you guys know you can use like a greased metal cookie cutter and place it on top, or one of our flex form molds, but these these are supposed to be a little bit rough around the edges. They're not supposed to be perfect. And Isomalt, as long as it's the right texture and you go very slow with it, is really not going to run all over the place. So you can pour this without any form. So all we're going to need is either a toothpick or a silicone tool of some sort to help guide it. And we're just going to start in the middle and slowly pour this out to the edges. Okay, so I'm just going to start right in the center with my Isomalt. And I'm just going to let the Isomalt run out itself. I can move the bowl a little bit, but you see how as long as I don't pour too much at once, it's not going all over the place. It kind of stops when you stop. So I'm just going to slowly go almost to the edge, not all the way. Now this really depends on how level your table is too, so if you have an unlevel table, you may want to try and level it off a little bit, or you will work on top of something where you can kind of affect the level. But you see how I'm just grazing the tool across the surface and just pushing it out to the edge. And I'm going in sections. I didn't pour this whole thing because I don't want the edges to cool too quickly before I can do this step. So I just did half of it, but you can even do a third or a fourth at a time, or just go in little spots all the way around. And then I'm going to, once I have it out to the edge, I'm going to pour more. Now you notice I'm not starting over here and letting it run in. I'm starting from the original puddle because you don't want to trap air bubbles between two puddles of Isomalt when they meet up. So I'm just going to pour a little bit more. Now, if you don't spread it out all the way to the edge, it's really not a big deal because no one's going to know. The Isomalt transfer sheet only transfers where the Isomalt touches, so it's not a big deal if you don't get it to the edge because we're going to texture and paint the edges anyway. Now, if you accidentally go over a little bit, again, we're painting the edges, and you could even heat and trim this with the torch and with scissors after it's cool if you wanted to. So really, you know, play around with this, and once you've done it a couple of times, you can kind of get it, you know, into the shape. But if you do overflow or you don't fill it enough, it's really not a big deal because we're going to be disguising a lot of that. Plus, you could always trim it too. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think that it is a nice shape. I could even make the edges a little bit more variegated if I wanted to make it a little bit rougher. But I'm going to go ahead and leave it like that. The only other thing that I'm going to do is I am going to lightly torch any surface bubbles because hot air rises. So if any bubbles got tumbled in while it was pouring, they're going to rise to the surface after a minute or so, and I can just pop those. So I'm going to very lightly, trying not to really go on the paper, just on the Isomalt. Always keep moving with the torch and you won't hurt anything. Okay, so I don't know if you could really tell the difference from up here, but there was just some teeny tiny bubbles that I just very lightly torched. Now, remember, if you torch too much, then you can actually bring it back to a boil. So don't do too much, just a really light layer. You may not even notice anything happening with the bubbles if you didn't have as many, but it's good to just do just in case, because if any bubbles had cooled there and you didn't pop them while it's liquid, what happens is if you torch over it when we go to attach all of our pieces and there was a bubble, the torch is going to pop the bubble, but because the whole thing is cooled and solid, there's no liquid to fill it back over, and it's going to create a little crater of, you know, just where it popped. So I like to do this while it's liquid. Even if you don't notice a huge difference, it's good just in case. And then we'll go ahead and let that cool. These don't take very long, so it's probably going to take about 5, maybe 10 minutes max for this to cool, and so I'll just slide it off to the side. You don't have to work on a silicone mat for this because it's on a plastic backing. That's another thing is, remember when you're pouring these, that the plastic backing goes down, the matte side goes up. So shiny side down, matte side up, because the matte side is the paper and the shiny side is the plastic backing. So if you pour on that, you're just going to get a beautiful oval-shaped clear disc as it releases from that plastic. But it does have that backing, so just make sure that you have that shiny side down, and then either just start on something else. You can slide this out of the way very carefully if you need to. So I'm just going to put him over here.
So Patricia Martyr said that she is joining a little late. She just missed all the craziness. Right?
Yeah, exactly. You just missed the craziness of having our huge storm happening right now. Okay, so while that is cooling, I put a little fan on it just for time's sake. I just put my little battery operated fan blowing over the top of it because I want to make sure that it's cool enough to show you guys once I'm ready to take it off after I pour my crystal. But you don't have to do that. It's just because I want to rush it a little bit. Remember never to put the Isomalt in the fridge or the freezer because you don't want any of the moisture or the condensation to affect it. So I'm going to let that cool about 5 minutes or so, and then I'm going to heat up my pink. So like I was saying before, if anybody is just jumping on, you can use the pink, our beautiful Simi Isomalt pink that was in the accessory kit. You can make your own pink with airbrush color. If you want to dilute the pink, our pink a little bit, if you wanted a paler pink, you can mix some of the clear in with the so do a couple tiles of the clear, couple tiles of the pink, or you can melt them both and kind of pour and stir, and that way you can do it in real time. But I'm just going to heat this. I know this is in an orange bowl, so it's hard to see that it is pink, but it is a really pretty pale pink. So I'm just going to go ahead and pop this back in the microwave for 30 seconds, and then 15-second intervals if it needs more after that. Clean up my work surface. Now remember, if you want to flavor Isomalt, you absolutely can. It's just a sugar-free hard candy like a lollipop, so you could definitely do a like a oil-based flavoring. So I use like the Lorraine candy oils is what we use here in the States a lot for flavoring, and that works perfect. Just add a couple drops and it will be fine. Don't taste test it while it's hot. Make sure that you let it cool, and then you can taste test it to see if you want to add more or if you want to dilute it with more Isomalt. But yeah, that works really good if you are going to be making something that someone's going to eat. Okay. Now another option for these agates that we were actually just talking about is, so this was an Isomalt transfer sheet, right, that we poured. But let's say you wanted it not to be see-through, you wanted more of a solid background, so if it's going to be laying on top of something like, you know, let's say the cake underneath had polka dots or had a texture on it, you don't necessarily always want to be able to see through it because it'll distort the image a little bit. So you can actually do the same thing on an icing sheet. So you can pour on an icing sheet, and then you do have to cut those out because they're thicker. So after it cools, I would just use an X-Acto to cut it out, cut out the sheet, and then you could put that on top of a cookie if you wanted to. You know, you can make your agate picture that you print out on your edible paper, make a template to go with it, and then you can make your cookie the exact same shape and size, and that would be really, really pretty as well. You know, you can do that on icing sheets, and then it's a little bit of that solid background that you could affix right onto a cookie, which I think would be really cool.
Yeah, I love that.
All right, you could even dip and stick a lollipop stick to the back of these if you wanted really pretty agate lollipops. Okay, so see how I just brought my pink up to that boil? I'm not going to pour it yet. Remember, we're going to let it settle. So I'm just going to give it a minute or two off to the side to cool, and we are going to use our silicone mold today. So the silicone mold that we have is a brand new mold that we made for this tutorial, and it's basically a really pretty crystal pendant shaped piece, and it has kind of like a rougher side to the top, which is where I'm going to put my chain hanging from and do some gold, and it's almost like the setting, and then there's a smoother, more faceted side on the bottom. So that is what we're going to pour. Remember that with silicone molds you don't have to pour in any or put in any prep for it. You don't have to powder it or grease it or anything. We're just going to pour it right in. You can also use plastic hard candy molds, but hard candy molds are going to need to be sprayed with cooking spray. So spray it with cooking spray and you know, just wipe it out with a paper towel. And the same thing with metal molds. So if you wanted to pour into like a metal cookie cutter or a metal form of some kind, a cake pan to make bases, you have to spray those with cooking spray, but not silicone molds. Okay. How you guys doing? Is anybody following along, or are you going to watch first and then use the techniques later? Remember, this is going to be available to replay on my Facebook at all times, but I also take this and I will put it up on my YouTube channel. So if you missed any of my past Isomalt Playdates, I edit, you know, put them together in an edited form, and I put them on my YouTube channel. So you can go back and watch. I have a whole playlist of all of them, so you can find them really easily. My YouTube channel, if you haven't been on it, is just under my name, Sidney Galpern. So just search that and it will pop up, and you can see all of my past Playdates as well as a whole bunch of other tutorials. Okay, so see how my pink is now settled down, it's calmed down, it's not boiling and bubbling like it was before, so I can go ahead and I can pour it. So I'm just going to pour into my mold, pretty much up to the top. You can see that pink a little bit brighter now. Okay, and then I'm going to use my tool again, just, I mean, this mold is pretty like easy, it doesn't have a ton of nooks and crannies, but I'm just kind of grazing the surface. That's what I do with the agate as well. When I use my tool to spread it, you want to make sure you're not stabbing down at it. You kind of want to go from the side, especially with toothpicks because they're a lot sharper, and you just want to push it kind of over the surface. That's what I'm doing with this one because there's not too many crevices, but these little points here of the facets can sometimes get lost. So I'm just going to go ahead and let that cool. I will do that same trick of popping the bubbles on the surface with the torch. Just a little. I didn't really have any, but just in case. I do that step, and I always do that step with every thing that I pour. And then this guy's a little bit deeper, so it's going to take slightly longer to cool. I would say probably in the more like the 15-minute range. I'll probably put it in front of my fan too, just to speed it up again for demonstration purposes. But if you had like a really cool draft on one of your tables, you could put your pieces there, or you can put a little fan on them. Or if your environment's a lot cooler, you know, if you keep your kitchen really cold, that will speed it up as well. But I mean, it really doesn't take that long. 15 minutes, you know, max for regular room temperature should be all that this one needs. So we'll go ahead and put that off to the side. All right. And let's see, I'm going to go ahead and get my next tool ready because my agate is just about done, but it needs one more second. So the next tool that we're going to use to add the texture around the outside of the agate is a really fancy one. It is aluminum foil. So I use this a lot for texturing because it gives you really cool effects. So I'm just going to take a piece and I'm going to start crunching it up. Just like that. Now I don't want to do it too tight because I like the texture of mine to be a little bit more open, but of course the more you compress it, the finer the lines are going to be. So I'm just going to kind of crumple that up, and that's what we're going to use to texture the edge of our agate. So I'll go ahead and grab my agate sheet, which should be cool. Okay, I'm going to put my little fan on my crystal mold that I just poured. Now to test if this is cool, you want to use a tool or a toothpick, not your finger, just in case it was still liquid. So I'm just kind of popping the excess Isomalt off the end of my tool here so it's nice and clean, and then I'm just going to tap it, make sure it doesn't make a dent, it doesn't feel smushy. And then once I feel confident that it's not going to be too hot, I can go ahead and test it with my hand, and I can pop it off. So you can already see how much more transparent that's gotten from the Isomalt being absorbed into the paper. And then all we're going to do is just peel it away, and you see it just pops right off. You don't have to trim it, you don't have to cut it out. Sometimes you do get little stragglers around the edge of just little pieces of paper, so I'll just kind of brush those off with my finger or with a paintbrush. And there is our beautiful, realistic agate slice. I absolutely love how these look. I just think that they're so, so pretty and glassy. There's so many uses for them too. You can use them for cake toppers, you can paint like an inscription on it, or you can impression it with something. All right. And now we're going to go ahead and do that edge texturing that I was talking about. So I'm going to use my piece of foil, and I'm going to torch the edges, and then I'm just going to imprint it. So we do want to make sure after we torch that we let this cool for a minute so that we don't accidentally stick the aluminum foil to the piece, because this will stick to liquid Isomalt. You want to kind of wait until it's more of a pliable, smushy Isomalt than a liquid Isomalt. So I'm just going to go like an inch or two at a time. And I'm not doing too much heating because, again, I don't want to get it to like a liquid state. I'm just heating, I'm letting it sit about 10 seconds or so, and then I'm going to start imprinting it. Now the longer that you let it sit, it's absorbing the heat, so if you touch it to it right away, one, it's going to be too sticky and it could stick to your aluminum foil, but it's also not going to let the heat absorb in enough, so only the very surface level will be smushy and the inside will still be hard. So if you want a really deep indent, you want to let it cool, or let it kind of sit for about 10 seconds. I don't know if my camera will focus on that. There we go. So you can see that little bit of texture I'm starting to get. I'm going to do a little bit more though. I'm torching on the surface as well as at the side, because I'm going to pick this up and kind of press into the piece as well so that the piece doesn't have too smooth of edges going around it. So see how I did the top, but then I'm pushing into the agate as well. You don't want to torch on the paper side, you just want to torch on the Isomalt, but you see how that just gives it a really nice, natural, kind of rough edge to it, and when we paint it with our gold, that's going to look really, really pretty and really pop.
Sidney, Debbie says that you have to throw it down.
I have to throw it down?
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd appreciate that.
She would if she was here.
Okay. And then I'm just kind of smooshing in. I'm kind of fading the texture in a little bit, so I'm kind of doing it a little bit lighter as I get in farther to the piece. And of course you could go as far in or as far out as you want to, depending on how much texture you want. I just tend to do the very edge. So see how I push down, and that also will thin out the edge a little bit, so it makes it look even more realistic. Wait those 10 seconds. If you're having a really bad problem with your foil sticking, if you just tend to press into it too much, what you can do is before you actually crumple the foil up, you can spray it with some cooking spray and just wipe it off with a paper towel so it's even. And then when you go to you crumple it up, and then when you go to press it into the piece, it's going to have that oil on it and it won't stick as much. So if you find that you are super excited about imprinting it and just keep doing it too fast and not letting this cool enough, you absolutely can just grease the piece of foil first.
Is the Kathy would like to know if the paper on the transfer, if it's edible.
Yes, the paper of the transfer sheet is just a type of icing paper, so it is totally edible.
And it's edible ink too, right?
Yep, edible ink in the printer. Alright, so see how I'm just making my way around those edges. Almost there. I don't like to do too much at once because I find that it cools down too quickly. Just depends on how fast that you work. Giving it those few seconds. If you get any fingerprints or anything on the piece, it's okay because you can, when you glaze it afterwards, it will take those fingerprints out. Of course, you should be wearing gloves, but for this part, if you don't have them on and you find that you're getting smudges, the glaze will take those away. You can also just torch lightly over them. There we go.
Dad says he's in the other room, so you can't reach him. And thank you, Debbie, for filling in Laura on what we're doing.
Alright, so see how my texture goes all the way around the edges. And I mean, it looks really cool just like that. You can leave it just like a crystal kind of texture too. It just roughens it up a little bit but doesn't draw too much attention to it. But I really like how that looks. I think that it just is super, super nice and, you know, just adds that kind of finished edge to it so that it doesn't look unfinished. It just kind of pulls the whole thing together. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to check on my crystal here. I think it should be just about cool. So again, I'm going to take my tool and just poke at it, make sure that it doesn't make a dent or anything. It should be good. And then I'm going to remove it from the mold, and we have this beautiful crystal. Now you can see that the surface is a little bit cloudy compared to the back that's super, super shiny. That's just because silicone naturally collects bubbles on the surface of it. So you have a couple options when you go to do this. One thing that you can do is with silicone molds, you can actually grease them if you want to a little bit. So I would actually take like a wide paintbrush, and I would spray some cooking spray on this. I wouldn't spray it right in the mold because I don't want it to collect in any little pockets and be too much, but I would hold this like over a paper towel and just spray some cooking spray on it, and then you can wipe your mold before you pour it, and that will help to eliminate some of the bubbles in the piece. But another thing that you can do is also use a palette knife to get rid of the bubbles without getting rid of the facets, which is what I'm going to show you guys. This is an awesome technique that Liz Merrick does with her crystals, so our big crystal molds that we manufacture for her, those are what we do, that's what we do for this as well. But I'm going to show you guys how to do it. So if you just torched it, they would go away, but you'd also lose all of those facets. So I just have a little baby palette knife. I'm going to heat it up until it's pretty red hot. And then I'm just going to drag it along the surface of each of those pieces. So you see already how shiny that got. And it also gives it that cool, like, it's not a ragged edge, but sometimes when crystals are cut, they have almost like a texture to them. Kind of where the blade went across it, so I think that it just adds that realism. And that's a really quick way to do this as well, to just eliminate those bubbles. So I'm just kind of scraping across the top and melting any of those surface bubbles so that it gets nice and shiny and it retains all of those edges and those sharp points that are so pretty.
So Sid, when you heat that up, it smells to me like cotton candy.
Yeah, it has that like caramelly sort of smell to
amazing.
it. Just as it's melting the Isomalt super hot. Alright, and now we're going to be painting this in a second, so I'm not being too perfect with it, and I'm not worrying about the textured top, because we're going to paint that. But you see how much shinier that got. Now, if you have any rough edges around the back of it, what I'm going to do is flip that over. You could do this before or after, and I'm going to torch those, but you always torch them from the back. So this is the side with all the facets, and then this was the back that was up when it was in the mold, if that makes sense. And I'm just going to lightly torch those to smooth them over. And then at this point, after about 10 seconds again, you could go ahead and cut it with scissors. It's going to be nice and pliable, but usually they'll all just recede into itself. And that will be perfect. So you see already how much clearer and shinier that got. I'm just going to get rid of that little bit of Isomalt so it doesn't get onto any of our other pieces. Just this bit that I wiped off from the palette knife, just with some water.
It reminds me of like a ring pop.
Exactly, right? It looks just like a ring pop. You could put this on a band instead of a chain. That would be super cool. All right.
That is just so pretty.
Isn't that awesome? Okay, so we have our two elements. I'm going to go ahead and let's make our chain really quick, and then we'll start painting so that we have everything all together. So I'm going to put these guys off to the side, and next we're going to make our chain. So I'm going to heat up my clear again. I don't need to get it necessarily to a boil. I just want it to be nice and melted so that I can pour it out, because we are going to pull the chain. So we're mixing air back in, so it doesn't matter if we have a little bit of air bubbles in it. We don't have to boil all the air out. Okay, I'm going to do this without a heat lamp, but you absolutely could use a heat lamp for this. It would make it a little bit easier just to keep everything warm, but I wanted this to be accessible to everyone, so I'm not going to use the heat lamp. I'm just going to work quick. And so I'm going to be pulling Isomalt. If you are unfamiliar with pulling, basically it is to get a Isomalt from a liquid form, which is good for pouring, like we just used it, to a solid that we can sculpt with and make our beautiful little delicate pulled chain. So I am switching to a silicone baking mat for this. It's a little bit thinner and it's easier to move around, and I think it releases a lot easier. So that is what I'm going to use. Pop my Isomalt back in a little bit more. But I am going to leave the Silpat mat underneath because it helps so that the metal table, or really any countertop, doesn't insulate too much heat. I find that if the mats insulate too much heat, it's going to stick to the silicone because the silicone pores open up from heat, and if it just gets a hot spot and gets too hot, it can stick to this mat. If that happens, just remove the excess Isomalt. You can still use it, it's no problem, and you just soak the mat in a little bit of water and it will pop right off. But I find having a double mat just so that it almost lifts it up off of your tabletop, even if you're not on a metal table. I found with a lot of countertops and like plastic tables that will happen, so I like to have the double.
Sarah just wants to make sure she'll be able to rewatch later, right? Because she missed the beginning.
Yes, absolutely. This will be available on my Facebook page forever, and it will also, within the next couple days, I'll get it up on my YouTube channel, so you can go on my YouTube channel under Sidney Galpern and watch it as many times as you want.
And the transfer sheets, they can get the pre-printed here.
Yeah, the pre-printed transfer sheets for the agate designs, that's a design that's exclusive to my website, so on simicakes.com you can order them individually or with the accessory kit for this project with the mold and the Isomalt and everything, or you can print it yourself by getting blank transfer sheets from icingimages.com. Alright, so I am just waiting for my Isomalt to settle again. If it is boiling a little bit, I didn't have very much in here, so that's why it did come to a boil. But again, you don't have to get it to a boil, you just want it pourable. But I'm just going to let that sit for a second. Like I was saying before, I like this double mat because it keeps it a little bit cooler and not super, super hot touching the table, because the table is going to get hot underneath. Now, if you're working on a stone or like a marble countertop, you could have the opposite problem, where it's too cold and your Isomalt's cooling down too fast. So no matter what counter you're on, I recommend this double kind of situation here, because I think that it just is a lot easier, but you'll find what works best for you. Again, it depends on the temperature of your room, how fast you're working, and things like that. Alright, so my Isomalt is done boiling, so I'm going to go ahead and pour it out, and since I'm not working with a lamp, I'm just going to kind of go from one thing to the next here. So I'm going to pour a pretty good amount of it out onto the mat. Way more than I'm going to need, but it's better because when you're not working with a lamp, the more you have, the warmer it will stay longer, so it insulates more heat. Now I'm going to start cooling it down a little bit, because the cooler it gets, the thicker it will get. So I'm folding the mat over in opposite directions, over and over, to start folding in cool air and thickening it. By alternating directions, it keeps it nice and even. And I'm just lining up the edges of the puddle, so this edge, when I fold over, is going to line up about with that edge. I'm not stopping before it or going past it. I'm just folding over, lightly tapping, and then pulling it back. Okay, and I'm just going to keep repeating this process And again, depending on the temperature of your room and how much you're working with, this should only take a couple minutes. But I can already see now that the edges of my puddle are starting to thicken and hold their shape, and so that's good.
And you can always reheat all the rest of it, right?
Yes, Isomalt can be reheated as many times as you want. So like I said, I'm working with a lot more than I'll need, but I can just pop that back in the bowl when I'm done and remelt it. You can also reanimate pliable Isomalt if it gets a little too hard. So there's really no worries with this. It's very, very user-friendly. Okay.
Oh, and if anybody's looking for the Pampered Chef silicone bowls,
Yes.
Your student Lori Winton,
Yes.
she is having an online
Pampered Chef sale. Yeah, the little bowls that I'm using, this is the smallest one in a set of 3. I really like them from Pampered Chef. They just came out with even smaller ones too in a set, which are awesome. So yeah, my student Lori is having a Pampered Chef sale. I shared it on my page, but you can also message me and I can send you the link. And it is awesome. I just love these bowls. They're so nice, and they come with lids too.
And the little ones come with like a tray.
Yeah, if you get the large set of the small ones, they have like a tray, so you don't have to worry about knocking them over or anything like that.
That's fantastic.
Okay, so see how the Isomalt is much more of a solid now, but it's still sticking to the mat. I am going to go a little faster with this, so I'm folding over, still lining up the edges, so I'm folding it directly in half, and then I'm going to rip it back a little bit faster just to help it release. And so you can see now with gloved hands, you would pick it up, and you can see how it's not sticky. Now technically this is ready to use, but it's still quite hot and pliable, and it's not really going to hold any shape that we put into it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this a few times. This is the same thing as what we were doing on the mat, just cooling it down by adding in more air. Remember, I have a whole Isomalt Basics series on my YouTube and pulling Isomalt. I have that super in detail and in depth, so if you want even more information about this, I'm just kind of doing a crash course right now because I know a lot of you guys have seen that. But if you haven't worked with pulled Isomalt and you want to know even more in depth about, you know, how to do different things, I have that on my YouTube channel.
Sidney, Jackie wanted to know, what about once it's been glazed? Can you reheat it?
I try not to heat it when it has the glaze on it. Maybe for poured things like this, but I definitely wouldn't pull it just because it dilutes the texture of the Isomalt. Okay, so now that I've pulled this a few times, it's slightly cooler and firmer, and it's going to hold its shape better. And I'm going to start stretching it into my chain design. So I know this looks really thick right now compared to our little gem, but I'm going to use my scissors to just kind of start cutting it down. This excess can just go back into the bowl, or it could go back under the lamp if you're working with a heat lamp. And I'm just going to keep kind of thinning it out and then cutting off the excess so I'm not working with a whole giant snake of it. And of course you can make this as thick or thin as you want. I'm mostly just stretching it. You don't want to touch this too much because as it gets thinner it's going to be very susceptible to cooling down if you're touching it too much. Okay, so see how I'm just pulling. Using my palms to roll it once or twice if it gets kind of bumpy or uneven from pulling, but not really touching it too much. Just pulling wherever it looks wider. Okay, that looks about good. Now this could get too hard to shape. If it does, you can lightly torch it, which I'm going to do before I put it in this final shape with my crystal here. So I'm just going to take and kind of heat the whole thing very, very lightly. Give it about 10 seconds for that heat to sink in again. And then I can feel that it's a lot more pliable. And now you can kind of, I'm going to make a little loop at the end in a minute, like the little jump ring that would be on the end of the piece, the little clasp or hook here. But I'm just going to kind of estimate it so it looks like it's kind of going through a ring here. And then you can kind of just either use your piece as a guide or just kind of tweak it once you get it on there. You don't want to touch it down to it for too long because it could stick, but I'm going to look at my other one to see kind of how I draped it. I'm going to go ahead and actually make a loop first. So let's cut this. The key with this is to just keep reheating and tweaking as you want to. So I'm going to have these kind of here, and I'm just going to sort of guide it into place. I'm just going slow with this, I'm not rushing it, because again we can reheat it as it's needed. So I'm going to create kind of like a C shape. You can see how fast this cools, so I just slowly kind of keep reheating it and tweaking it.
So Sid, what happens if it breaks?
If it breaks, you can just torch and stick it back together. Or you can just make another one. Remelt it and redo it.
You did on yours, right?
I did, actually. This original one, right after I made it, I dropped it, or I dropped something on it, and the whole chain broke. And you might be able to see a couple little, like, snaps on it, but I don't think it's too bad. I just torched it back together. So I'm just kind of overlapping my chain here, kind of keeping it pretty even. I really like the depth of having it laying over itself. So I'm just kind of draping it, torching it a little bit so that I can tweak it even more.
Can you bring the other one down into the picture when you get a chance?
Yes.
Just so we can compare.
And then once I'm kind of happy with the shape of it, I'm going to go back and size it to the actual agate so that I can make sure it's going to fit. Okay, so I'm going to let that cool for a second before we move it over, just so I don't completely distort it, but we can always reheat it. And then I'm going to kind of fake a little ring. I'm not going to actually make a loop. Originally I was going to do that, but it was just so teeny tiny that it was easier to just kind of make a little piece. So I'm going to take off of this here. I just cut a slice. If I can pick it up to show you guys. I just cut a teeny tiny little tube, and I'm going to use that and kind of form it into my little clasp. So I'm going to just torch that to kind of smooth and round the edges a little bit. And it's just going to kind of look like, because the ring would be going this way, not this way, right? Because something has to go through it, so it's actually going to be circular to the side. So it just looks like the front of the loop. And then I'll just heat up the top of the crystal and kind of slide it up and into it. And once we paint this gold, it's all going to look a little bit more natural too, because it will all kind of match. Okay, and then I'm going to make sure that's going to stay on. Of course, this could drape off of it if you wanted to, but I want to make sure it's going to look good. Okay, and then I'll just kind of heat and tweak these little ends so that they fit into that little ring shape that I made here. So I'm just going to use my silicone tools, heat it up a little. If you accidentally heat too much and you lose that defined line between the two pieces, you can always just re-imprint it with your tool or with a toothpick. A toothpick works great for this too, for just tweaking and adding little lines and dents and things. Just make sure that you let that Isomalt set or cool off a little bit before you touch it with the toothpick. Since toothpicks are porous, it tends to stick more, so you really have to make sure you give it those 10 seconds. Okay, before that sets completely, I'm just going to hover it over here to make sure, yep, that looks good, and then I'll let that cool. Alright, so these pieces can be thrown back into the bowl. Since I don't need them anymore, I'll just throw them into here, and I'll remelt them back to a liquid whenever I need them again. Alright, so I'm going to let that cool a little bit before we move it or do anything with it. And I'm going to do some painting techniques. So here, I'll keep this here so we can still see it. Let me grab my paper towels. Alright, so we're going to do, let's go ahead and do our pink first. Okay, so I'll grab this guy. And of course you can paint the gem before you did all of the polledness and everything, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it now. Now to get this pretty kind of variegated crystal effect, because these pink crystals, I didn't do it across like a very specific crystal. I just wanted to make my own version of a crystal and kind of have that depth of the pink and the white mixed in. So I'm going to use some gel color and some dilution solution. So I have my little palette. I'm going to do one of them with some white gel color. So this is Artisan Accents Snow White. This is my favorite gel color because it's super, super pigmented. So I'm just going to do a little bit of white. Then I'm going to use my dilution solution. So dilution solution, you guys have probably seen me use this before. I absolutely love it. It is basically an edible paint thinner that you can mix into the gels, and it will make it, you can spray it out of an airbrush, you can hand paint with it easier. And we just announced that we are now carrying dilution solution in our online store. So we are Very, very excited about that. This is one of my favorite tools. I do a lot of painting, so this is definitely a must. So I'm just going to put a couple drops in with the white just to thin it out a little so it's easier to paint, and I'm also going to do one cavity of this palette with nothing mixed into the dilution solution. It is just going to be the clear. I'm going to grab my paintbrushes, kind of a thin one and a wider one. Okay, so let's mix our white with the dilution solution. Remember, more dilution solution, the more diluted it is. So your color is not going to be quite as pigmented the more you add, or it'll dilute it. So depending on how intense you want the white, you can add more or less. Okay, so we're going to do kind of like a watercolor effect for this to get that variegated look. So I'm going to take just the clear dilution solution first on a clean brush, a pretty generous amount, so I'm really loading up my paintbrush. And I'm just going to paint one of the facets, one of the sections, with a pretty thick layer of that dilution solution. And then I'll take some of this, and we're going to do like a wet on wet watercolor effect, where I'm just going to dot some of that paint into the wet dilution solution. I'm going to add a little bit more white, or actually let's do one cavity of this with just white, not really any dilution solution. I'm just going to tap it, and the color is going to start to spread. I can take a little more dilution solution on my clean brush and drip it over the top too to kind of dilute it out a little bit. I'm not covering the whole thing with the white. I'm just kind of letting it ripple and run through and then adding more dilution solution over the top. You can also do this effect with alcohol if you want. I just find because the dilution solution takes a little bit longer to dry, you have more freedom to kind of play around with it before it dries down too quick. Okay, and that kind of creates like a marbly effect. And I'm going to do that on all of our sides of our crystal. I'm not worrying about that textured top. I'm just doing it on the sides here. You may have to tilt your crystal, otherwise it's going to want to pool downwards with gravity. So I'm just kind of stippling it and then adding more clear dilution solution.
And if they didn't want it variegated, they could just leave it.
Yeah, you can absolutely leave it as just a nice, beautiful, transparent crystal. To remove some of the color so it's not quite so solid if you overdo it, you just want to dry off your brush, and that way the brush will actually be kind of thirsty and it will suck up the moisture of the crystal once you go over it. So that's how I kind of get that like marbly frayed edge. I don't know if my camera will focus in on it, but you can see in the finished picture of the piece that I used for advertising and everything, you can really see it up close in detail. That kind of effect. I'm going to go ahead and do a few sections here.
So Sidney, you have another video and you did turquoise?
Yes, I have another painting video that I did on IGTV, and I think it's on my Facebook page as well, and that is doing a turquoise effect, but that one we actually do something very specific to Isomalt. We torch over it, and that's another way that you can get variegated colors. That's what I use to kind of bleed the brown veins throughout the piece. And so you can do that as well by torching over it. Move it off the paper towel first. But you can torch over the wet paint and it will kind of bleed it through the Isomalt, which also gives you a really cool marble effect. It's just a little bit different. Okay, so the kind of crystals that I'm emulating have a very milky sort of swirling effect, so that's what I went for. I did not cover it completely with the white. I just kind of dabbed it here and there to get some different effects. And yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and let that dry, and then you can also do another layer if you want to over it, but it's going to dry a little bit matte, so that will give it that really realistic look. It won't be quite as transparent, and then once we glaze it, just the surface will get shiny, and it looks really, really super cool.
Sidney, Jackie'd like to know, is the dilution solution thick like the gels?
It's not. It's watery. It's very, very, very liquidy. You can kind of see it. So it is, it's not just water or alcohol. It has, a whole bunch of different things in it, so that it actually, the closest thing that I can kind of compare it to is like if you took a confectioner's glaze, and it was really, really, really liquidy because it paints on so smoothly like glaze, but it's not that thick consistency. And it's not confectioner's glaze. It has a whole bunch of like secret ingredients in it to make it paint smooth, because I've tried that and it doesn't paint the same way as this. It's amazing. This stuff is magic. I absolutely love it. It's great for airbrushing. It's great for hand painting. It's really nice.
So Debbie would like to know, would it be easier to do this before you add the chain?
Yeah, you could do it either way. It's up to you, just for time's sake, so I didn't accidentally get paint everywhere and not have time to go clean it before I did the next section. Since I'm on camera, I did all the making parts at once, and then I'm all the painting parts at once. But you absolutely could paint it before you put the chain on.
You just have to watch the spots that connect, right?
Yeah, you don't want to put any paint where the two pieces are going to connect, because it can keep them from sticking as well. All right, so next what we're going to do is we're going to paint the edges of the agate and the chain as well. And so I'm going to use a little bit of layering for that too, but I'm using my Wedding Gold from the Sugar Art. This is called Sterling Pearl Powder, which is a luster dust. I'm going to mix a little bit of that with some alcohol. You could use the dilution solution, but I really find that luster dust paint really well with alcohol because it dries so quickly and it gives it that beautiful opaque finish. So I'm just going to mix some Everclear into that. I like a pretty thick paint. I don't put too much alcohol into it compared to powder, but of course everyone has their own preference. All right. And so I'm going to paint the chain, and I'm going to paint the edges of the agate as well. Okay. So you can also pull this in gold if you wanted to, and then you don't have to do any painting. You could just use gold Isomalt and pull your little chain. That would work great too. It all depends on the effect that you're going for. I went for more of a streamlined technique with this, just doing it in clear so that you can just kind of make it all at once and use the clear that you had from the agate. But of course, if you have some gold or silver or bronze or whatever color chain you want laying around, you can use that. Okay, so I'm just painting the edges as well as the top with that nice bright gold, and then I'm going to paint a pretty even coat over the pink because I want it to look like the gold is not pink underneath. I want it to look like it is gold. So I'm just painting a pretty thick layer of that gold, and then we're going to go back and shade it a little bit with some browns in a second to give it some more depth. Okay, so I'm just painting over that whole rough area on the top of the gem, and then I'm going to take a tiny bit, so I'm wiping my brush off. I'm using a flat brush. I'm not going to poke right at it. I'm going to put the brush parallel to the mat, to the table, and I'm just going to use the edge of my brush to kind of highlight the edges of the facets on the gem, because I think it makes it really pop a lot better and just brings it out. You want to make sure the white is dry before you do this step, of course, so that you don't accidentally wipe anything off. But I'm just going to go around the edges and just kind of highlight those. And again, once we get the brown in there, it's going to make it really, really intense. And then I'm going to use the same brush. This brush is a little bit frayed, which I like for this next technique. I keep all my frayed brushes because they get really cool painting effects that way. And so I'm just going to kind of tap and stipple on some gold, a little bit more intense at the edges, and then that frayed effect, if I just dry my brush off a little bit, will help me kind of ombre the color inwards, so it's not just a straight line. It kind of softens as it goes in towards the center of the agate. Make a little bit more gold.
Wow, it looks just like a chain.
It does, right?
That's really beautiful.
And I just did, a simple cord for that. If you wanted to get fancier, you can do, a twist like a braid. You could do lots of different things. You can use another mold, like a chain mold. You could do beads, like pearls, whatever you like. I really liked kind of the smooth, simple chain in contrast with the really detailed designs and painting effects of the crystal and the transfer sheet. So I didn't want it to be too busy by adding a whole nother shape into it. Okay, so see how I just kind of went around the edges and then I'm just softening them with my brush so it doesn't look too straight or perfect. And that really makes that texture pop too. It just kind of reflects the light really, really nicely. And there we go.
And that's the sugarart.com?
Yep, that's the sugarart.com. It's the dust. It's the wedding gold is the color. All right, so that is my first layer of paint. You can see it looks pretty, but on this one I did, if you can see it with the lighting, a lot more shading to it. I added some depth into it. So to do that, I'm going to use a little bit of deep brown. So this is from the Sugar Art as well. This is a petal dust. It's not a luster dust, so it is going to be matte. And I'm just going to take a little bit of this, and I'll just go ahead and mix it right into my gold here to get kind of a bronze color. Of course, if you have bronze luster dust, go for it. I tend to like to make my own colors with the base color, so instead of adding a whole new color of that bronze, this has the undertones of the same gold that we used before, and that way it kind of keeps our color palette the same. So you'll see me do that a lot, where I mix colors from the previous colors when we're doing shading. I try and keep the color family kind of similar. Okay, and then I'm just going to kind of use a wide brush. This is kind of just like a slightly puffy, thin brush. And I'm just going to kind of paint in the indents of some of these areas. I'm not covering up all the gold, I'm just painting in some of the indents to catch some depth and leaving the highest points on the piece a little bit lighter with that gold. You could even go back over it with some of the white if you wanted to really, really intensify. And of course, I'm just kind of doing a quick version of this. You can spend as much time making it as perfect as you want, but I'm just going to kind of shade in the edges of the chain a little bit and kind of in the shadows of where they overlap. This just adds variegation, so it's not all one color. I find that it can look a little bit bland sometimes, but of course that's all a matter of style. Everyone's got their own style, so you can apply whatever you like onto your piece. This is just kind of making it look a little more aged. Since this is a crystal, I want it to look very kind of rough and natural and almost antiqued in a way. Because I just really like that imperfect look when you're doing natural things like this. And then a little bit more, just more concentrated on my brush, using more paint just in the very, very deep parts. Kind of go around the edges to make sure the whole thing stands out. And then I'll do the same thing, just kind of every once in a while, adding some of this dark into some of the really, really deep indents on my agate, because that'll just make it a little bit darker. Now, of course, you can leave this, you can make it, just paint it with gold and be done. It looks beautiful and brilliant. I just really like adding shading into my pieces. I shade pretty much every single piece, even if it's very subtle, that I make, because I just think that it pops so much better, especially photography. Your cake is going to be taking pictures of at weddings and things like that. It makes it pop so beautifully. So see how I left a lot of the gold showing, the bright gold, but just by adding that little bit of dark around the edges and in the indents, it just made it really, really nice and kind of added that depth into it. All right, close my dust so that I don't spill them. And then we can put it all together. Okay. So we're going to move these off of the paper towel to assemble because we don't want anything catching on fire. Okay. So you can see how pretty that is now that it's off that messy paper towel. That really, really nice shading. I'll kind of try and let the light shine through that a little bit. That dark bronzy color just adds a little bit of a weathered look, which I think is really nice. It may get a little bit matte, but when we glaze it, it would go back to shiny. So don't worry about that. I'm just going to figure out where I want this to sit on my finished piece. Right about there. And then I'm going to torch it to stick. You could also, oh, I just popped it apart, but it's okay. I did that on purpose to show you guys how easy it is to put it back together. I'm going to go ahead and torch and stick this part on here. And then I'll go ahead and torch kind of just all over so that I can stick the chain on. And you see I just pushed it back together, and then you can add a little bit more paint if you need to, but I think that looks really, really pretty. Now you can see, I wanted to show you the difference. When I add a little bit more of the white onto the surface, it pops a little more. You see how this one's darker? Another trick that you can do is actually paint the back, so the underneath can be painted. Since this is on a blue background, if you want it to pop a little bit more, you can paint the back of it with that white. So you see how that one pops and is a little bit brighter. And then the other one, I didn't do that, so you can see it's a lot more see-through and translucent, which looks really pretty, but you may not get the same kind of pop of the colors like the other one does. So it's up to you. You can also just go back. I can grab, if I have my paintbrushes here, I can grab a little bit more of my white even and just kind of go back over, and if I got any gold anywhere, I can clean it up, and I can also just add a little bit more of a pop of that white into the piece and just dilute it a little bit. So you see how that brightens it up too. But I just want to show you guys that you have different options depending on the effect that you want to get. So you can do this with pearl dust as well. You can also mix pearl dust into the pink, and that will help it to be a little bit more popped as well. But just depending on the look that you want, there's so many different variations. Remember, this is your piece. This is art. No one can tell you it's wrong. You can vary this in so many different ways. I'm just here to show you kind of my techniques, but you can vary this in tons of different ways to get different effects. Okay, so of course the last step that I would do is I would spray this with a clear edible glaze, and that will lock out moisture and humidity so it doesn't get sticky, it doesn't get cloudy, and it also locks in the paint and makes it a lot shinier and brighter so that you can kind of have it you know, just all sealed in and it won't smudge on your fingers and things like that too. And yeah, there you have your finished agate and crystal pendant.
Beautiful.
Ta-da!
I love that. I love that.
Thank you.
Cool. No questions so far.
No questions? Okay, if you guys think of questions, remember you can write them in the chat, and you can also go ahead and send me a message or an email or Instagram message if you think of them later, if you're watching the replay too. Okay, so yeah, I would go ahead and spray that. Make sure when you spray the glaze that you don't get anything on anything. You don't want to have any silicone mats, any tools, any open tabletops, watches, phones, anything around, because the glaze is edible but it doesn't like to come off. So I just put it on a covered table and I spray it, you know, off to the side and then let it dry. And that glaze will really just make everything pop really brightly. All right, so let me just clean this up really quick. Okay, let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and switch my camera back, and I'll hold this piece up so you can see it.
Debbie wanted to see it a little closer when you bring it up.
Yeah, I'm going to switch my camera.
And
hi, guys.
Carol wanted to know, do you seal the underside?
You don't have to because the paper is sealing the underside, but if you want to, just in case, it won't hurt. It'll keep it nice and shiny. Let's see if, yeah, there we can see it a little bit brighter with the lights. Of course, I'm using webcams, so they're not the highest of qualities, but you can see it a little bit better in the picture that of the one that I made down here. This is the original one from that picture, so you can see it a little bit brighter. But yeah, so you can see all that pretty texture, the depth of the painting. Just adds a really nice kind of realistic look to it. All right, perfect. Remember, if you guys make this piece, I would absolutely love to see, so tag me in pictures so that I can see it on Facebook and Instagram, or at least send me pictures because I would love to see if you apply this onto your own projects. That's always super, super fun. Let's see, I will go ahead and tell you guys too about my next live streams that I have coming up. I have a couple banners that I can pop up. So I have a whole bunch of live streams and workshops coming up in October. I'm going to pop this one up really quick first. So these are my workshops and next playdates. So I figured I'd just put all those up if you guys missed them. I have on October 9th and 10th, we have my sculpted gingerbread tree, which I'm going to show you guys in a minute. I have him here. I absolutely love it. He's going to be so much fun, and it's going to be so much fun to see all the faces that everybody does in their trees, because we're actually sculpting the gingerbread into the tree and then doing the Isomalt accents and everything. So we're having one on Friday and one on Saturday, and I still have a couple spots open for those. That's going to be super fun. That one is a Zoom workshop, so we're going to see each other, and that way we can work together, and it's a little bit more advanced project, so that way we can talk and work together and ask questions and stuff like that. So I still have a few spots for that. And then my next Playdate, which is going to be just like this live stream for free on my Facebook page, is going to be the eye flower. So it's making our awesome Sugar Geek eyes and then pulling some petals and leaves and curlicues. So that's going to be right here on my Facebook page on October 16th at 2 p.m. EST. We have the accessory kits for all of these too. So those are available now on my website. And remember that you can always watch the replay of the Playdate just like this one on my YouTube channel and on my Zoom classes. Each student gets a edited high quality tutorial of all the techniques afterwards, and the week after I make a tutorial of it. So if you can't make the actual workshop dates, you can receive that as well. And then we are also starting our chocolate series of hands-on Zoom workshops. So the first one is going to be October either 23rd or 24th, and they're going to be tempering 101 and making truffles and bonbons. So showing super high-end decorations and ways to make your truffles and chocolates really, really pop, as well as how to temper in any climate. Of course, I'm here in Florida. It's humid, it's hot, and I'm going to show you a whole bunch of tricks to making sure that it's going to work in any climate for you, using tools that you probably already have in your own kitchen. Let's see.
And Jackie wanted to know
Yes.
if Dawn has the kits in the UK, but I think we could probably work with Jackie enough with what Dawn does have that there might just be like a few things that she doesn't have.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, a lot of this, I try and make them so that you can use what you have, as well as, if you don't have access to the whole kit, or, a lot of it's just our stuff that you can get individually anyway, so. And then I'm also doing another live stream on Cake Flicks. Again, we're doing caking all over the world, so it is an all day, I think it's like 12 hours of demonstrations, 11 different demonstrators all day. It's October 3rd, mine is at 12 p.m. EST or 5 p.m. UK. I'm going to be doing this ghostly Isomalt cake, so you can see pulled Isomalt ghosts, spun Isomalt spider webs, some poured Isomalt skulls, and I'm going to be showing you how to put it together in this whole cake. Each demo I think is about 50 minutes, and there is 11 all day long. There's lots of giveaways and special guests, so it's a really fun event. It's all free as well. It's streamed on the Cake Flicks page on Facebook, so you can watch everything. And yeah, that's going to be all day, but mine is at 12 p.m. So if you'd like to tune in, I would so appreciate it, because I think it's going to be so much fun. Perfect for Halloween and fall coming up, but you can use all these techniques, in lots of different ways depending on what you're making. I also have another live stream coming up. I'm going to be working with Timbo. That one is going to be, I believe, on October 5th. I'll have more information about that soon, but I'm going to be making something super duper cool for that. And then I also wanted to tell you guys, if you missed it, we have the Simi Torch team, which I've had for a while. It's a Facebook group for Isomalt lovers, enthusiasts, professionals, all different levels. But I'm really revamping it up now, and we're going to be doing contests and challenges, giveaways. We're going to have Simi Deals of the Month, which is exclusive deals and coupons on certain products, and then we're also going to do a free giveaway every month to members, a free gift, and then you also get first access to all of my workshops, and all of my new kits and new molds will all be announced there first. So if you want to make sure that you get certain spots, because a lot of times my Zoom classes and things sell out very quickly, so if you want to make sure that you get a spot, you will have early access to that.
It's
so
just a Facebook group.
Yeah, it's just a Facebook group. It's totally free. If you just search Simi Torch Team, you can request to become a member, and I'll approve you on there, or you can send me a message and just say, hey, add me to the Torch Team if you can't find it. I'll be happy to do it. Like I said, it's all free, and you get these awesome member perks, as well as a whole community of artists that love working with Isomalt and with blowtorches, and all different skill levels, from very beginner to advanced, and it's super fun because we can get different ideas and ask questions and post inspiration and stuff like that.
You forgot one thing.
What did I forget?
October 18th on Food Network.
Oh yeah, on October 18th, let me switch my camera back to me here. October 18th, they are running the competition that I did with the amazing Holly Broussard on Food Network. So we actually did this for the cooking channel last year, and it aired, but if you missed it, they are rerunning it on Food Network October 18th.
11 p.m. Eastern.
11 p.m. Eastern, so October 18th, 11 p.m. Eastern time on Food Network. We're going to be on again. I won't give you any spoilers, but I will tell you it is super fun. There's tons of Isomalt work, and all the teams were just absolutely amazing. It was a great experience, so make sure you tune into that if you're here in the States. It's going to be super exciting. All right.
So Sandra had a question.
Yes.
She is having a problem when she tries to move the Isomalt around on the transfer sheet. Some of the design is coming off.
Okay, so that could be two reasons. It could be that you're accidentally scraping the paper with the tool, so make sure you're only grazing the surface of the Isomalt. But if that's not if you are doing that and everything is fine, you're not scratching the paper, it could just be too hot. If you pour the Isomalt a little too soon before it cools down enough and settles enough, it can actually heat up the paper too much that it starts to lift off. So with the next one, just let the Isomalt cool a little bit longer before you pour it. It should be pretty thick and not too pretty more syrupy than watery. Okay. You guys have any other questions?
Oh, and stick around because we should have our third contestant for the FIPGC.
Yes, we are very, very close to having our third finalist contestant for the International Federation of Pastry, Gelato, and Chocolate. That announcement is going to be very soon, so if you've been following, we are choosing the USA representative to be Team USA to compete in Milan, Italy for the World Cake Designers Championship. So stay tuned to our Facebook page, FIPGC USA, and on my page I'll share it as well because that's super exciting.
Yeah. So this will be the third contestant. Tammy Valera and
Jean Chapwell
are the two other going to the finals.
Yep.
And then
we have one more, and then between those three, one finalist will be chosen who will represent Team USA and compete against, I believe, 18 different countries for the World Cake Designers Championship title.
The world is open again.
Hopefully, yes. Hopefully everything will be good. We'll be able to do that, and we'll be allowed to travel and things again soon.
And Kathy just wanted a time again for the Food Network.
11 p.m. Yeah, Eastern time for the Food Network show that's going to be on. Okay, all good. I can't see the comments on mine, but I promise if you have any other questions, I will be happy to answer them. Just send me a message. If you're doing this later or watching the replay and you have questions, just send me a message. I will be happy to answer. And yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy and great. And I will see you guys in my next live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.